Subdivision Association. What I'd first like to ask is if you all turn off your cell phones. I mean, I don't care if you take pictures of me or anything else, just not having bells ringing while it's going on. As in past meetings, we've requested that we have a civil time, keep your voices down. We're not gonna speak with angry voices, speak calmly. When the person up front is speaking into the microphone, then everybody else needs to be quiet. When it's your all turn to talk, raise your hand, you'll be called on. If you don't get called on right away, just leave your hand up. We will answer everybody's questions. As Ingrid said, the main purpose of this meeting tonight is to go over the budget presentation that the board's prepared, as well as the candidate introduction. First, there's a couple announcements of things that have gone on. Julie is the other trustee. She's out on medical leave for a couple of months. Second thing is that the pool's done. It was done on time and it was done on budget, like the other items in the she spearheaded the projects and she stayed with the vendors and pushed them to make sure that they were done on time. But anyway, all the projects for the recreational assessment were all done on budget there. Let's see. There were 2 resolutions passed in the last month or month and a half. They were to clarify what are indentures, some big parts of the indentures. The new indentures, as you know, were passed in the end of May. I signed those things within the last week of May, and they went on to the state for the county for recording. The 2 resolutions were to clarify the fines that are in the resolutions, in the indentures. The indentures that you voted for allowed for the trustees to fine for non-compliance by homeowners. That's in Article 4, Section 9A. Also in Section 4, Article 3, it says that the trustees make the rules. So there was a section in there about trash cans that was vague. In both our old indenture and the new indenture, both did not allow trash cans to be stored outside the garage, or if they were in an approved enclosure. I think if we were to ask 4 different people what an enclosure was, we'd get 4 different answers. So we came up with a definition of what that enclosure is. That we negotiated that with the Community Standards Committee, and we have that word verbiage done, and that's all passed into a resolution. We have those here tonight. We'll pass those out later on. Any questions before I turn this over to Denise and she can get right into the budget? Any questions? Yes, ma'am.
You're talking about your fining residents, but if we don't know what the standards are and we don't have a copy, how do we go to know what they are without being fined?
Okay, in our indentures, there are 5 pages of restrictions. You all voted on those restrictions when you read your indentures. You know, when you got a chance to vote on those indentures. We have clarified the trash can resolution. We've clarified the fines.
The copies are through DNI on Facebook, or, I mean, on the website.
Pardon me?
You give us a letter and we do what you ask. Are we getting fined from the first time, or?
No, that will be coming out. We'll pass that out later. We just don't want all the papers being confused when we're going over the budget, but it says, you know, when Ingrid and Julie go around and they're taking notes of violations and stuff, and you get a letter, you will be given a letter that says you have 30 days to correct the violation, or tell us when you're going to correct the violation. If you ignore that or you don't do it, then 30 days later starts a fine.
Gotcha, okay.
How do we know how much that fine is?
It's on the letter. You'll
We can
get that.
discuss it later after you pass it on?
Yeah, we sure can. We sure can. Any other questions? Let's see, Denise?
Okay.
Let's talk about the budget.
Yeah, let's talk about the budget. This is an exciting time for all of us.
Oh, and if you could please hold your questions about the budget until she's finished, and then she'll answer all the questions.
No, we're not moving it. Hold on.
AV guys?
Is this not progressing? AB guy, I'm here. Yeah, get the whippersnappers up here. Why is that not registering to go forward? It's not choosing. Oh, they present. No, it's not moving. This was working before y'all walked in. We tested it.
Here you go.
There we go.
Okay, let's go to the number one again.
Can you turn the lights down?
Yeah.
We had,
Yeah, janitor. Oh, they're already done. So basically, we're presenting today Nantucket Vision 2021. And this actually started way back in December and January of last year, when a group of residents got together and we realized that a lot of the repairs were not being made to the subdivision. At that point, it was about a year and a half that the tennis courts were totally locked and in disrepair. We had known from the prior year in 2017 in that summer at the closure of the pool that there were significant repairs that needed to be done to the swimming pool. It was well documented that the surface needed resurfacing, that the filtration system was poor, that the pump was only circulating water at the one end of the pool, and in the baby pool it would recirculate in that end. But it was fully not working. We also knew that the surface of the swimming pool, the pebble surface was breaking off and actually clogging some of the lines going into the filtration system, causing more needed repairs. And so basically there wasn't a plan to address this. So in January and February, in January, a group of residents got together, and at that time it was Jason Evans was on the board, Noel was on the board, and we sat down and we said, hey, we just can't have the subdivision, the assets fall in disrepair. We will be your support system. Whatever we need to do to get these repairs made, we need to come up with a plan. So with that, on Saturday mornings through January and February, we posted signs up at the front of the entrances of the subdivision and said open meetings. Everybody was welcome. They came in, we'd have it at 9 o'clock in the morning. Basically, we identified the problems. We reviewed the indentures. We had conference calls with the lawyers saying, how can we come up with a plan through the indentures to raise the capital that's needed for these repairs? Because quite frankly, we were afraid. It was 19 months of disrepair with the tennis courts. We're lucky we didn't get sued by a resident. for non-operation of the facilities that they were paying for. So during that time, we got bids on the tennis court for the repair, and we had great resident partners, you know, Pamela Glazier, she looked at 5 different vendors. We'd sit around the table and compare each section of the bids to find out the most cost-effective plan to go with. And at that time, Noel, God bless his heart, he reads the indentures time and time again. You should see his copies that were worn thin. And he realized there is a recreational assessment that has not been utilized. We could have used that feature of the indentures. And nobody wanted to put out a special assessment. That was the worst thing that we felt that we could do, but we were in dire straits. We only had $30,000 in reserves, and that is not feasible for the size of projects. We had about $100,000 that needed repairs. So we did execute the recreational assessment, and we put out a letter to inform the residents exactly what is transpiring. Quite frankly, I think it was a shock to people that they didn't realize the scope of the repairs that were needed in the subdivision. The subdivision's 25 years old, and those assets, you know, were declining over the last, really significantly, 5 to 7 years. We drastically needed to change course and rectify that. So we partnered with a lot of great residents, and you know what? We had a 97% compliance rate on that first assessment that went out. You know, 97% of the folks right away paid up so that we could get those projects done. So why is that important? Why is all this important to maintain our property values? I'm back here. You said I should do this. It's not working, it's raising up again. You might have to stay here.
You're not, you can't leave.
Why are we freezing?
Yeah, this should run
Should I not talk so much? So why this is, as he's figuring this out, why this is a good investment, it's because Wildwood is a boutique community. It's a small community in Nantucket, 283 homes. We actually live in Wildwood, which is a really,
Microphone.
Yeah, pull that up too, it's hold good.
we actually live in Wildwood, which is a very desirable area with Rockwood school districts, right? And then basically also, it's a little distracting up here, guys. Sorry. But yeah, no, you've got to keep going, but I don't know what else.
Where's the dog?
Ruh-roh.
There we go.
Woohoo.
Oh,
Okay.
all right.
Okay, there we go, let's try again. Wildwood does not offer a community center, and we're told by some of the realtors that have been partnering with us that when out-of-towners come in, that they are specifically requesting subdivisions with amenities, with a swimming pool, with a clubhouse, with the tennis courts, because Wildwood does not have a community center. And then finally, it's we've had a report that our real estate for this year has a 9% increase in you know, the value of our homes this year. The days on the market, 47 days, has moved down to 26 days. So we feel like it's a good investment, and we feel like we've already shown you that this is a good investment. So what did we accomplish this year? We addressed the critical issues needing repairs. We replaced that pump and filtration system on the pool. We replaced the tile, resurfaced the pool, got a new pool cover in. We did the new awning over the pool house to protect the equipment. We corrected the drainage issue. There was a significant drainage issue that was running between the pool and the tennis court. And we had a lot of bids on this. Some of the bids were $30,000, some were as much as $40,000. When I came on the board with Noel, we were able to take one of the bids that was a lower price bid, and we were able to work with the engineer and take the higher price bid with some of the best practices and basically combine the two designs into one. And we saved over $25,000 by doing that.
Wow.
So I feel like
That's
we're
really
a pretty sharp group to work with. So we saved some considerable amount of money. We resurfaced those tennis courts to include pickleball and shuffleboard. More residents now can use those facilities. It's not just for tennis. We see families up there playing shuffleboard. So again, we're bringing a sense of community by doing some of these projects. And we installed a unique resident pin lock so that you have to be a resident to use these facilities. We've assigned over 50 resident numbers, so now the tennis courts are being used and we're able to track that. So again, we're showing a return on your investment. So going into the 2019 budget, you all received your packet and hopefully you all have read it. So this budget allows for some of the features. One, it increases utilities that were under budgeted in 2018. We've said all year long that we need a new website. The website is over 10 years old. The software now is not supported by that platform, so we can't post the new indentures and such. So this is a critical need, and we will hire some expertise help in this area. We need repairs to the irrigation system. We've had repeated areas going out, and we may need to just scrap a certain area along Old State and have that replaced. We need increased tree trimming. A lot of these trees are older. They have a lot of dead branches underneath it. So in fact, there's one that overhung the pool that a large branch just fell when the guys were doing the repair. We have to watch out for safety concerns of that. We had requests from residents to extend the pool hours. And through June and July, we thought we would run this for a test run and just extend it by 1 hour. So this budget allows for that. Also, the pool house door has significant dry rot, and we need to repair that. But most importantly, if we do nothing else in this budget, it is to fund a reserve study. And we'll explain that next. This plan also allows for $3,000 to be put into reserves. So we are still saving money for the future while we're making the repairs that are needed in the subdivision. So what is a reserve study? Many of you may not have heard of this. Personally, I think other boards were not aware of this because this is the solution. This is the piece of the puzzle that should have been put in place well over 10 years ago. This would have eliminated any special assessments, any recreational assessments, had planning been done years ago. So this is the main thing. So guys, follow along. What a reserve study is, it's an extensive analysis of the infrastructure, including a thorough review of each asset. It results in a projection of each asset's lifespan and replacement schedule. With these projections, the board can now model future budgets and project yearly assessments for the next 20 years. So this is a roadmap. It's an independent analysis. No matter what board is put in place, they are going to have a roadmap as to future repairs and maintenance for the subdivision. So the items that they look at parking lots, the roof, the siding, the heating, the landscaping, irrigation, pool house windows, pool surface, the decking, the coping around the pool. I mean, it is quite extensive, the list of items that they review. The benefits of this reserve study: one, it ensures fair reserve contributions. So whether you're in this subdivision for a year or two, or you're here 10 years, you're paying for each part of that asset for every year that you're a homeowner here. So it's not fair just to assess somebody, a special assessment, or even like in our case, a recreational assessment. If you happen to have been unlucky just to move in the subdivision last year, that was it was terrible, it was awful, and we never want to do that again. This way, it's a fair contribution each year. It provides for more consistent household budgeting, it eliminates surprise special assessments, it reduces long-term homeowner costs of maintaining the common property. We know that delaying repair costs more money. Just in 2 years, we have demonstrated that the tennis court, putting off the repairs, they got a bid 2 years ago for the tennis courts to be resurfaced. It cost $7,000 more this year to repair that because the extensive nature of the cracks, the freeze-thaw, it was significantly more money. So this will hopefully minimize and keep on a repair schedule. It also increases the curb appeal. The benefits on the HOA: it fulfills the fiduciary responsibility with expert advice. It provides current and future boards with a definitive maintenance and replacement schedule. We actually purchase software so we can do what-if scenarios. So what if we repair this year? Or what if we delay that repair? What is that doing to the assessments? So we can do these projections. And it provides knowledgeable replacement costs for these items. We were shocked when we got the pool estimates, it was close to $50,000. Well, if you don't plan on that, you're gonna be underfunded. And it's a basis for adequate, not excessive reserve budgets. Okay, what HOAs have completed these reserve studies? This is just a list of them. I picked off of one of the vendor pieces of information that does the reserve studies. These are just some of our neighbors in the area: Lake Chesterfield, Enclaves, Castle Pines in Baldwin. So there's many others. There were probably 50 or 70 on the list. I didn't want to bore you. You don't know all of those communities, nor do I. But the meaning of this is it is the standard operating procedure for HOAs. In addition to that, the board surveyed 5 HOAs, and we were looking at best practices. Why are we in this pickle of a mess with over $250,000 of repairs that are needed last year and going forward in the next 2 years? Why are we in this position? So what we had found, and we stopped at just 5 HOAs, all had completed these reserve studies many years ago. All have similar amenities. They all have appropriate reserves in excess of $100,000. I have a couple of year-end budgets just from a couple of these properties that we surveyed. $134,000 in reserves. Castle Pines, they're in Baldwin. They have similar amenities, similar size home, numbers of homes in the community. The Highlands out in Wentzville, again, $164,000 in reserves. Enclaves, $160-something thousand in reserves. We had $36,000 in reserves. We had a conference call last night with Lester, the lawyer for Nantucket, and his words to us on the phone, Denise and Noel, Nantucket is grossly underfunded. You don't want to hear that terminology. It's grossly underfunded. So therefore, we couldn't make the repairs, or so prior boards actually thought they couldn't. So all of these anticipate needed replacement schedule for the infrastructure all utilize the annual budget for accruing reserves, and they're used for ongoing maintenance and repairs. None use special assessments. And in fact, 2 realtors that have been advising us that are in the multi-million-dollar club say it puts up a red flag if we see a special assessment. That means they can't handle the budgetary process, that these extra expenses are popping up. So that is a negative. Of annual assessments, of these 5 that we surveyed, all the standard practice is that 70 to 80% of an annual assessment goes to baseline operations, and 20 to 30% address capital improvements or go to reserves each year. These are the standard operating procedures for HOAs, and it's exactly what our association's attorney, Lester Stuckmeyer, has recommended in accordance with the language of our new indentures. Okay, so we're moving into what are we going to do in 2019? We understand what has been done. We understand how an HOA should operate. Now, what are we going to do? Okay, we have increased communication because we wanted feedback from you folks. We did that when we did those meetings, trying to figure out how we were going to address these problems in January and February. This board has a series of 7 committees to seek resident input. And so again, through being transparent, we basically put out a survey asking, in what order do you want to address these major repairs? 60% of those responding placed cul-de-sac replacement in the #1 spot, and that was followed by the clubhouse and the monuments. So originally, we're kind of eager to get the show on the road. We wanted to get these improvements done with and move on with our lives, right? We wanted to do 2 projects this year again, but after listening to some of the homeowners, and there's an older gentleman right over here, you made a big impact on us. And we want to be considerate of residents' budgets, but yet we do know it is our fiduciary responsibility to make these repairs. So what we are recommending is 1 major project and 1 smaller project this year. So it would be the cul-de-sac, and then we could knock out the window replacement at the clubhouse. So that's what we're recommending. In August, with all of these projects that we had on the radar, and we were waiting for the survey results to come back and what order we were going to address these, and we knew we had to get our budget together, we actually met with 2 landscape companies, and 2 arborists came out, and they surveyed 15 cul-de-sacs. Each one customized a plan, and that was presented. Where possible, we wanted to keep the trees. Some of the trees are too far gone. They have borers, they have blight, some have been hit by lightning. It just wasn't feasible. And pretty much each arborist matched up on our report when they had said which ones to take out. Plants with high tolerance were recommended due to lack of watering. The range of the bids were anywhere from $35,000 to $42,000. We allowed for $40,000 for landscaping. A landscape committee, again, we want resident involvement. We have actually Judy Roach. She has taken some gardening classes, and she's going to be on this committee to help advise. We have Celeste Littleton, who had studied master gardening. We will have her involved in this. Anybody who wants to join this committee is welcome. And basically, we'll review the bids, we'll look at the plans, and they will help guide the decision on the vendor. The start date would be March to April is ideal. And basically, back on the display here is one of the vendors. It was the more higher priced vendor that actually had the fancy drawings. And there is a customized plan by cul-de-sac there. Again, this is just an idea. It's the first run through, a first draft. Certainly by no means is the final version. Okay, and then the window replacement at the clubhouse. There were 2 bids that were obtained. We looked at double hung, double paned windows. 5 windows were recommended to be tempered glass. They're not tempered right now. The breezeway, the atrium breezeway, it's wet. People could be slipping and falling. So we thought with those large lower panes, it's better to have those tempered to protect us legally. And one of the clubhouse windows that the door opens out onto the swimming pool. If the breeze gets that, we're gonna temper that pane as well. Bids were received for $6,000 to $7,000, and the budget reflects the $6,000 for that improvement. Okay, so this is the money sheet, guys. Okay, so that rolls up to $168,000 budget. And basically, on your sheets that you were mailed, we broke this out into 2 sections. It is just one annual assessment is what is recommended. The baseline portion of the annual assessment is $432. That increased $32 over last year, or $3.08 a month. So if you were to back out, let me pull my sheet up here. The reserve study information, and you backed out the $3,000 that were going to reserves, that would be a 2.6% increase in base operations. Okay, that's pretty reasonable for keeping the normal maintenance up in the subdivision. The capital repairs and improvement portion of the annual assessment is $162 and additional $13.50 a month. Might be a couple of lattes at Starbucks, maybe a pizza out. A total assessment would be $594 or $49.50 a month. So this is another way we can look at this. Remember prior conversation, we said most budgets were built with between 70 to 80% baseline operations, with 20 to 30% capital improvements. Lo and behold, our budget reflects the standard in the community. Okay, so the question is, why implement one annual assessment? Well, basically, that's how the indentures are written. That's what the lawyer, Lester Stuckmeyer, has advised the board in the creation of the new indentures, and he counseled going forward that capital improvements are budgeted annually through this process to reflect the standard of operations too in the community or among HOAs. Again, my example, Castle Pines, for 10 years, actually dating back to 2009, every year they have listed their capital improvements, but it's all part of the annual budget. The same thing with the Highlands and the other examples that we've listed tonight. We actually listed some of our trustees' duties and powers under the indentures. You guys vote us in to speak on your behalf and to work on behalf of the residents, and that's what we're trying to do. It's in your best interest. And then we have a section about assessments here for improving, maintaining, and operating the common ground in all facilities thereon. Okay, so the annual assessment letter repairs will be mailed out in December. The annual assessment will be due February 1st. And this is a neat feature. This is what we promised you guys, back in the spring, basically, that we want to ensure that you could pay ahead of time. You could prepay. So basically, once the assessment is levied, we have to collect it within 30 days. That's in the indentures. So, but you can prepay. You can send in a little money at a time. So for those who do not want to pay in one lump sum, some residents already break down the annual assessment and prepay over 4 months before the due date. In this case, it would be about $150 a month if they prepay. Okay, so that was all 2019, right? Well, this board is looking long-term. We're looking at the future. So in 2020, the additional projects will be on the board. So based upon the resident survey, in 2020, the capital improvement project would be the clubhouse. Again, in August, when we were doing all the budgeting, trying to figure out how much all these repairs are gonna cost, we obtained 5 bids. And the bids allowed for removal and relocation of 2 closets in the clubhouse. The kitchen would be reconfigured in an L shape. An under-counter stove and microwave with a full-size sink, and a middle grade wood-look laminate flooring was priced with new baseboards. Again, the drawings are located in the back of the room over here. I think you'll like some of the designs. Again, they are preliminary designs. It was just to get bids so that all the bids would be standardized. So the average bid, shockingly enough, again, it was about $45,000 to $50,000. Yeah, we kind of thought maybe 20, 25. Again, we're a little shocked at the cost, but that was the average bid for repair. Again, resident committees would review bids and make recommendations on the contractor. So the vision for 2021, again, the monuments, they would be the last to be repaired. And I know a lot of you folks will be driving by going, I think they look okay. They look okay from the street. Why are we spending the money on that? Holy smokes, I was part of that too, but when I walked up and I started to see the decay in the monuments, which have been, again, well documented for at least 5 or 7 years, the brick is flaking. It was faulty brick. So basically we got bids from 2 sign companies for 4 monuments. 3 bricklayers came to consult to see if we could repair or even re-tuck point. All 3 bricklayers said the repairs are so significant, it's not worth repairing. All agreed that the integrity of the brick was faulty, the brick was flaking apart. Now, brick or stone monuments range $13,000 to $17,000 a piece. And Dave Williams gave us a good contractor, and indeed, they are that expensive. High-density foam was identified as a more cost-effective option, and those estimates, high-density foam, if anybody has seen Lake Chesterfield sign, where it says Lake Chesterfield in the middle, that's the high-density foam. So you'll start seeing, if you start paying attention to signage with different communities, you'll start seeing that they're using this option a lot. Personally, I think it's because of the cost factor. So those were even $10,000 a piece. The total estimate to replace is $40,000 to $50,000. And again, resident committees would be formed to have the feedback and make the recommendations and the final decision. Preliminarily, we got a couple of examples in the back. That you can take a look and see what you think about some of the designs, but that's 2 years away. So that is the board's Vision 2021. So in closing, the board has presented a comprehensive plan. One, how to dig us out of this hole and to start accruing reserves again. And part of that plan is to complete that reserve study. The recommendation is to replace the cul-de-sac landscaping and the clubhouse. It's outlined a vision for this subdivision for the next, really, 3 years. And most of the infrastructure will be repaired and refreshed by the end of 2021. So we should be in a good position to kind of start all over. And you know, by that time, on the radar, it should be the tennis courts again. They should be resurfaced every 5 to 7 years. The pool, every 10 years. So we have to start planning ahead for the future. And realtors finally have advised us that there is a direct correlation between the repairs in the subdivision and the return on your investment. So here we are, we're calling you to action. The board needs your support. Fill out the 2019 proposed budget ballot by checking approve the proposed 2019 budget and hand that into DNI, or you can mail it back in an envelope by November 8th. A simple majority, this is what's changed with the new indentures. You can't be apathetic anymore. Every vote counts, so it's the majority of those voting is required for either passage or failure. Pretty simple. So together, we can make this a great community. We can rebuild and build on our vision for 2019 and beyond. Okay?
Over the next decade or two, because I'm only gonna last a decade, maybe 15. Oh,
I hope I last.
I'm a Vietnam era veteran, and this guy's a combat veteran, but that's from Vietnam.
Thank you.
But anyway, you're welcome. What is, you've given us numbers, Wentzville, I think, my recall was 163 or 175K for their reserve. That was the highest you recommended. What is your position, her position? Is she a trustee by any chance? What's your name?
Yes.
Oh, you're running for office.
Trustee. Well, that's what she was talking about. That is what the
But
reserve.
what's your number?
Well, that's, we find it out by having the reserve study done.
Oh,
Here's,
oh, you mean the 3,000
Okay.
for the reserve study will give
Well-
you a recommendation?
Okay, we're paying, we would like to pay $3,000 to have the reserve study done. And they will come through and look at everything in our subdivision, whether it's the heater in the clubhouse, whether it's the brand new pump on the pool, whether it's the landscaping in the different areas, the monuments, everything that wears out, okay? And they will determine which items are going to be replaced first and second, and third. So we'll have those dollars available when those items need to come up. So in our budget, we will have amounts built into the budget to start funding, putting into reserves. Now Denise was just talking about that in this next budget, we don't even have a reserve study done yet. We're putting $3,000 more into the reserves for next year. But it needs to be a lot more than that. I mean, it just.
It could be, your opinions, or the consensus of the membership, could be 175 or 200,000.
No, I doubt that.
I
really.
doubt that much.
Yeah.
I just wanna know how long.
I mean,
So
200
it's gonna take a while for us to right this ship. This ship again, we are grossly underfunded is what the lawyer told us. So it's gonna take a while to get our feet on the ground financially. We're broke. So, you know, we will have that information from the reserve study, but we know this year it'll be 594. We can play catch up, you know, if we do another project similar in size to the ones that we're doing this year, I think we could stay at that same maybe assessment. I'm not promising anything because it depends on what the reserve study is, what that independent company's recommendation is.
Whose great idea in this was the 40-something plus thousand to put an L shape in the clubhouse? Because that, I mean, who uses that?
So,
The key, or the
yeah.
tags, the only time either.
So, you know, like anything else, just like the tennis courts, it wasn't used when it's in disrepair. And even 3 years ago, we had revenue being generated from that asset. The last 2 years, nobody wants to rent out that clubhouse because.
40,000 for an L-shaped kitchen is generated.
So, but that's over 25 years. That was 25 years. So basically, even if it cost $2,000 a year for the next 20 years, that's kind of the cost that to maintain an asset like that. So we do anticipate, once it's remodeled, we're not talking anything fancy. We're talking about, you know, middle of the road kind of, you know, fixtures and furnishings, nothing fancy, but usable for football parties or for meetings. And Noel and I have discussed, once we get into that project, we would like to just say, it's part of your HOA. You could rent that out for a party or a bridge club or a guy's meeting or a retired person's donut break every, you know, once a month. That's part of being in the community, and that's part of you using those assets. We want those assets to be used. It's just costing us money right now, sitting there, not being used.
Okay, here we go.
So rude.
I just want to say thank you for all your hard work in trying to right the ship and giving up your weekends and with your phone calls. So it takes a lot of work. So thank you very much.
Again, thank you for your hard work and finishing the tennis and the pool on time and on budget. It's very commendable. So my question was that since that from your vision and from the budget that we have to give around $160, $170 per year for capex for the next 3 years. So my question is why are you planning for only 3 years? I'm here for the long run.
Yeah.
I have a kid who is in the elementary school. I'm
Yeah.
staying here for the next 10 years.
Yeah.
Why don't you stay there for the next 10 years, for 3 years?
Love it, and I missed that point. So, in the reserve study, it projects out repairs for over 20 years. So for over 20 years, we will know what needs to be replaced, it'll be a cycle. It will be a roadmap that guides future boards. We only did the next 2 because we know those are critical repairs that really need to be done right now. But we don't have the money, nor do we want to assess the homeowner to that level to make the repairs immediately. I mean, wouldn't that be ideal? It all could be rain spanking shiny and new right now.
I mean, everybody wants something new and shiny. And I understand that the pool was breaking and the tennis court was not usable, we had to fix it.
Yeah.
But do we really need to have the cul-de-sac really neat and clean in the next 1 year? And as you were saying about the initial kitchen in the clubhouse in the next 1 year or 2 years, we need that in 2 years? Can you not wait for the 5 years?
You know what, it's up to you folks. When we get that far, we'll put it out to a survey. I mean, you guys have responded on the survey and we want the resident input. You're part of this community. So if you feel that's too aggressive, we can change the plan. But that was the plan, you know, that we had feedback on from the residents.
Thank you.
And I do have a copy of a reserve study, and it's pretty cool. You can see how itemized it is and what the schedule is This property, this example actually came from Colorado, but it's exactly how every asset is projected with the lifespan and the cost for replacement. I have to say, you know, Lake Chesterfield, I omitted to say this example. Lake Chesterfield did this, and they go by their reserve study. This year, they have 3 air conditioners in their pool house. One of them was scheduled to be on the fritz or be outdated and be replaced. Will be funneled into all of these different categories and accrued. They just go into the little lockbox with air conditioning. There's the money for it. They pull it out. There's no drama. They planned for it. The same thing, that's how they address. They just replaced $30,000 worth of pool furniture. They didn't have to assess anybody for it. They had planned for it. Again, it's in a little lockbox. This was the year that all the pool furniture got replaced. Boom, they had the money for it. So that's what the envision is.
I was just gonna say, because I'm on the board of the zoo actually, and we just did a very comprehensive reserve study for the zoo and all the facilities at the zoo. And one of the things that I found so very interesting was, you know, when we're in a situation like we're in, I agree with you. Sometimes you think, well, maybe we could stretch the clubhouse over 2 years, or we could stretch the landscaping over 3. But the thing you also have to remember is, like the repair that we just did to the tennis court, I didn't realize until I was on these committees that tennis court surfacing happens every 5 to 7 years. The pool resurfacing, because I did all the research on the pool resurfacing happens every approximately 10 to 12 years is sort of, hopefully the product that we use this time stretches us more to like 12, but it's gonna have, so by the time you get through the cycle with one, then you're coming up to the next thing that has to be repaired. That's the beauty of that reserve study, is because it projects out the lifespan of not only the repairs, but also then the significant repair, like the life cycle of a furnace or the life cycle of a water heater. So as you're trying to figure out how much do we want to spend and how do we do that, that's where that modeling for the software, the what ifing, if we stretch this out, how does it affect the reserves? It's a very interesting, and it allows us as homeowners to so much better budget what we're doing with our money, because then you can literally see, you know, because I'm in it with you for a long range vision, and we're gonna have to put a little more money aside. $395 it's not gonna cut it for the neighborhood amenities that we have, but it's gonna allow us to budget that out and get in a good financial position. It's a really interesting process. I just wanted to share my experience with it because it's really interesting and it's very helpful to understand it.
Will we get copies of this reserve study?
I don't see why you couldn't get that. I'm not as
The mailing
familiar with.
is irrelevant compared to the numbers.
Yeah, I mean, I got a copy of this one. I have to learn how to interpret it, you know, but I don't
Well, I like to
see, if you
say
pay
paper.
for it, I don't see why you wouldn't be able to get it. And hopefully at, upcoming meetings, that's something we will share with you. You know, hey, we got this done. Look at this. This is how it models. Everybody's got skin in the game out here. Y'all should know this
They
stuff.
mailed out to the 283 home.
Yeah, if you pay for it, I don't see why not.
Okay.
First off, Denise, thank you so much for all the time and effort that you and everybody else has put into doing everything around the neighborhood. I am a very new resident to the neighborhood. My wife and I moved in July, actually on the day that the party was going on at the pool house and the road got closed when our movers are coming in.
Oh, no.
Neither here nor there.
Nothing good.
Yeah, not, you know, we'll see. But one of my initial comments is that when I was moving in, and if anybody's curious as to why this is very important, I can tell you firsthand that when I was putting in bids for that home that I live in, which is directly across from the very newly renovated tennis court, I certainly went above asking price for the house. by more than I'm proud to admit. But the point is that the folks that we bought the house from, I could not tell you how long they lived there. They were kind of a younger couple. But I can certainly tell you that they got a return on their assessment fees from the homeowners associations by the overpay that I made on my house. So from strictly dollars and cents, you know, the cul-de-sacs are important. I don't have any kind of access to a cul-de-sac, but it's home value, home appreciation. It's something that a lot of us are going to rely on for years to come, for nest eggs, to fund different types of things in the future. So I appreciate all that stuff. Now my actual question is, and this might be a question for Ingrid, I don't know who to direct the question to, but any kind of, you brought up something about legal liability. For instance, the thing that was brought to my attention was that we wanted to fix the windows. When we were going through a home inspection, windows could pass or not pass a home inspection. I would assume that windows could pass or not pass a fire inspection for the building. So if those aren't replaced and up to par, somebody could theoretically sue, God forbid something happens. What kind of blowback would the homeowners association or the homeowners, if any, get from any kind of legal trouble that might occur from that?
$2 million in liability.
Carry insurance.
That's fine, but
Go to the microphone.
The association carries insurance, property liability insurance.
$2 million
And that
umbrella
would
first?
that would be your first point of defense.
Okay.
Actually, the way I understand legal situations, if you did nothing wrong, then if the association, if somebody gets hurt, but it's not because the association did something wrong,
But
yeah.
something not being up to safety codes would be something wrong.
Well, it depends on safety codes. Right now, the clubhouse was built.
I'm just speaking in hypotheticals. I'm sorry, that's
Right.
just my
But I
question.
mean, but that goes to the answer. You know, we were built several years ago, and so the codes were such that it applied in the past. I think if you make changes, and we saw that when we were getting the bids for the clubhouse. Right now, everything is approved and is in code, within code. But if we make changes, now you're gonna have to jump that line, and now you're gonna have to go to the new code.
But if things aren't repaired, then they might not be up to code.
So we faced that in a couple of, when we were getting some of these bids at the clubhouse. One, it's kind of interesting that there's no fire alarms at the clubhouse. One, because, you know, it's semi-private and it was built at a certain time and it's not a full-time residence. So we all of a sudden are noticing some of these things that, wow, maybe we should have some of these protections. If we were to remodel the bathrooms, they would have to be brought up to ADA standards. The kitchen, there was some modifications with the kitchen sink, that it would have to be lower and the countertops have to be lower for ADA. So these are already on our radar, but certainly we have to be vigilant and, you know, we have to.
I'd like to add one more thing. Windows are important and doors for fire code that you can exit the room. Okay, it's not the glass itself that it's the fire code, it's the fact that you are able to get out. And we have that.
Thanks, Noel. Thanks, Denise. Thanks, Ingrid. Are you guys taking a couple questions about the specifics of the 2019 budget?
Sure.
Well, we've been talking high level, and
Yes,
I've
we
already
have.
kind of delved into it. A couple things. Just curious. On line under administrative expense, at line 5025, the annual year-to-date so far is already $3,500, and it's budgeted for $500 next year. I'm trying to understand why the one-year aberration there.
So it cost us to do that recreational assessment. It was an extra $2,450 because D&I has a fee to set up separate lock boxes. So by doing, again, we just did one assessment, that's that extra expense. So that was charged to us through that particular.
So that was a charge from DNI to us, okay. The next one.
Also, if we do a special assessment, there's gonna be another $2,450 wasted instead of putting it all in one assessment.
Understood. All right, thank you. The other one, just out of curiosity, and it's probably, I think we all see this, under utilities, line of 5043 for sewers, knowing MSD and the number of capital improvements and cost of those capital improvements they have planned across the region, I realize this year's budget is already well below. And I know next year you have it budgeted for $1,000. Based on this year's run rate, shouldn't it be closer to $1,800 to $2,000?
So there's some good call outs and all of that. One, the sewer is a percentage of your water bill.
Correct.
And we had to fill the swimming pool twice this year. So our sewer bill, or drain the pool twice, that our sewer bill would have been higher as a result of that. Again, with some of the nuances, if it's $200 or $300 off, this is only a budget. We try to manage the category, and then we try to manage the overall budget. So we could move some money up and take some money away from different categories.
I understand exactly, because I know in other line items, there's significant decreases year over year that are part of the budget, which are great to see. And obviously, I didn't pick any of those out to talk about or ask any questions, so appreciate it. Thanks.
Can I would like to explain something here because it sounds like, DNI is gouging us. That's not the case. The charge that per the management agreement is up to industry standards. To set up an account and keep tabs on that account and do the billing and do the charges and do the late fees, there's a cost on that. It's a labor cost. And it's time consuming and there's postage and all that kind of stuff. So yes, there is a charge of $8.50. I'll be fair in a minute. There's $8.50 per household to set up that type of an account. So that's the reason why there was a charge when the $400 assessment was imposed.
Ingrid, Denise. Thanks again for everything you guys have done. Just a couple of administrative questions, and this is from the perspective of just making sure that we're looking at everything. Totally makes sense in terms of how you got this all lined up. Completely understand that it's a simple majority that's needed to pass the budget. What happens if you don't get the simple majority? Where are we?
That's a good question. That's why it's really important for you to vote. It did cost a lot for this mailing to go out. It did cost a lot of time to prepare this budget. Obviously, the board feels strongly in this recommendation. If for some reason it does not pass, we have to put it out for another vote, which would be another expense for mailing and processing and everything. So we really believe that we are recommending a fiscally responsible budget. It addresses a lot of our issues. We did really well by you by staying on budget for the capital improvements that we did this year. And this is less than half of that special or the recreational assessment.
And I'm glad you said that because it kind of puts the ball in the tee for my, for my next question. I know that when I came back, we were out of town, and my recollection was, hey, I think we already paid this, and I opened it up, read it a little bit further, quickly understood what it was, and it's just like, well, I wasn't here to say yay or nay or otherwise to it, and the motion's already passed, so I'm going to get the checkbook, I'm going to write another check. And I've had a number of people come to me, and friends, neighbors, people that I know who know that I have a real estate background, where I worked down at Washington University School of Medicine. So people kind of pick my brains about this and that and everything else under the sun. And again, I'm always happy to recommend vendors and other people who do stuff like that. It's
Yeah,
what
you've been a good partner.
Well,
Yeah.
happy to do it, but I just anticipate that there's gonna be a lot of, questions and blowback about, hey, the improvements are great, but, the people who are coming to me are saying, yeah, we like the fact that it looks great and everything, but it's the process that we went through to get to the end result. That
So
I think
if-
people are having a problem.
Okay. And I'll make two things and I'll let Noel jump in here. First of all, around the neighborhood, we really have had, we've been embraced. The board has been embraced by these repairs from the residents. They like what they're seeing. They like all of the social activities. They like the engagement. They like the increased communications with the minutes being emailed to them with, these letters are kind of lengthy, but they're fully, they explain the situations fully, okay? The board was in a situation that 19 months of disrepair of the tennis courts and the swimming pool would not have passed inspection. They were dumping chlorine by hand last year. I will tell you, it would not have passed inspection. The pump was failing. The finish, was clogging up the lines of the pump. We had ProPool out there numerous times blowing out the lines. It was dire. We didn't want to make that move. It was within our fiduciary responsibility under the old indentures that we were working on. The powers were there to implement the recreational assessment. I hope we never have to do something like that again, because I hope we all learn from past boards what not to do and what to move forward and do. We've done the research to make sure we know moving forward the best practices of how to keep, the HOA at a fiscally responsible level. Noel, do you want to?
Yeah, I think maybe you're asking a question, how is it that we could come about and submit another $400 bill to the homeowners? Is that what you're asking?
No, I understand how it works.
Okay.
I'm relaying the feedback that I was getting
Okay.
from other residents in terms of like what their questions are, because
Yeah, well,
people come to me and say, I'm not on the board, don't ask me.
Actually, the budget should have gone out when it was. Jason Evans, the former president, and myself did not want the budget to go up, but it went up because what we wanted to get were some of the costs involved to repair parts of the community, because we only had about $35,000 in our reserve study, or in our reserves. Looking at when we found out the massive amount of costs that we were going to be experiencing, since I had been studying the indentures, there were two different assessments that were supposed to be used. There was the recreational assessment and the general assessment. They're used for different purposes. The one just hadn't been used before. That's what we needed to do.
And again, I understand
Yeah.
that in terms of like, hey, this is a card that we can play to get
Yes.
this done. But if my memory serves, under the old indentures, which, are done, they're no longer in full force
Right.
and effect, wasn't the amount that could be assessed in terms of the assessment to all the residents capped?
Oh, yeah, well, yes, there were two different assessments. The general assessment was $200, that's the maximum it could be. Or, if you read a little bit further, it talks about being multiplied by a fraction which was developed by the Consumer Price Index. Won't go into it, but anyway, that fraction was actually 1.7. So you multiply the 200 times 1.7, you actually came up with a maximum of, or 1.77, so I think it was $360 is what the maximum could be on the general assessment.
But that wasn't a moving target, was that fixed, or did it escalate each year?
Well, it would change each year according to the Consumer Price Index. Now, the other assessment, which was recreational, the maximum on that was $400. Or if you considered in with the consumer price index, also times 1.77 came up to, we could have charged $700 some odd additionally for that. It clearly talked about there being 2 annual assessments. One was just never used for.
If the general, last question, if the general assessment had CPI escalation language in it,
Yeah.
then why wasn't that escalated year over year? Because again, I
It
understand.
did. Originally it started at $200.
But then it got to a point, and again, I've been a resident here since 2005, and for the longest time, it was, I think, $365 year over year over year over year.
Yeah.
And if the need to kind of encumber some money for future repairs to maintain the assets is there, then why wasn't that card played?
Well, that's a good question.
That's
That's
a
what
good
we
question.
want to know.
It should have been done.
It should have been done,
Yeah,
and
just-
a recreational assessment should have been used. We ended up using our resources, talking to the lawyer, and understanding the indentures to understand our powers. So that's
Just
exactly.
contrasting the difference between a little of a gradual increase year over year, which, from what I'm hearing, could have been done, versus special assessment, recreational assessment, $400 all at once.
Lake Chesterfield increases theirs 3 to 5% every year.
And we haven't had one since 2005, so it should have been done, but it
I
wasn't.
agree. I think it's a question on how you get there.
I don't think I need to know. I got a question, Denise. We get this budget and we go by what you want, and I hate to say it, I agree with a lot of that, I really do. But people, and I've got heard a lot of stuff about this, I don't know if it's true or not. These different committees wanna take stuff, put whatever ideas they got in there, and that's gonna come out of the budget that we want for the projects that we need done. And that's why I'm asking if there's any truth to
No,
that.
the money is earmarked exactly how we have it laid out, and any of those committees are open to any resident that wants to come and share ideas. You can come and sit at the table, we welcome everybody.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that they cannot arbitrarily just use, we want this done, and use it until our stuff is done.
No.
Well, that's a
That you did, and I remember you saying it was about 50-50, where either we did the increase in the annual budget and then a special assessment. How come we didn't do that?
Because the lawyer recommended against it, and we
But
have
we
proven,
voted
wait a minute. The board has the ability to make the rules and the direction on this. And we have been advised, not only legally, who created the indentures, how the new indentures are to be used, and we have demonstrated the best practices with 20, 30 HOAs, that none work that way. So we're trying to share with you the best practice and the standard operation procedures for HOAs. But thank you for your question. Angie?
I just wanted to say thank you to the board for all the time and effort and all the phone calls and for meeting with everyone. And I truly appreciate the vision and where you're going with for our neighborhood. I appreciate that the tennis court's been fixed, the pool's been fixed, and I appreciate that you're wanting the best for our neighborhood. And thank you for your time.
Because I know a few of you want to leave, and we want to be able to introduce you to the other candidate that is running. Ingrid, do you want to make the introductions? One more.
Just real quick, if people opt to make their payments in 2 payments, will there be an additional fee through DNI? Okay. And then Denise, you mentioned emails. don't think people are getting emails of the minutes.
Okay, we need your emails all year. Every communication, we've been asking for emails, because starting next year, we're not gonna be mailing this stuff
Well,
out.
we've been giving them, so
Except
we've
for
been giving
voting.
them. So somewhere it's getting dropped.
Okay, so make sure that your email is on the sign-in sheet in the back, and that we will double check the roster on that.
We're getting email, but not email with.
Nope, they don't email the minutes. Learn
That's
that
what
one.
you're saying, not everybody's getting all the communication.
Well, they don't email the
We
minutes.
do get.
We get some, not all.
Yeah, but she doesn't do it.
Okay, so that was the budget discussion. As it was promised, Denise felt like if we have the introduction of the candidates at the annual meeting, that doesn't allow enough time for people to know the candidates. So a time was open during this meeting to do that introduction. We have two candidates for the position. Denise was appointed to take over a position that has come to term at this time, and she was nominated to run again, and she was eligible for re-election, and she is running again. So we have Denise, and then we have John Ryder. Technically, I guess Denise doesn't want to go first.
She's resting.
Technically, John is going to go first on this presentation, and John was a former board member, former president, and he lives at Mission Bay Drive, and we welcome John.
Easier. Thanks for giving me the time here. For those of you that don't know me, I've lived in Nantucket since 2005. I'm a father of two. I got a little girl here at Fairway, got another son that's 3, so he'll be coming here in a couple of years. I did serve on before I get on the board, I own Harpo's, the restaurant in Chesterfield. I have done that for the last 4 years. Prior to that, I was in medical sales for a few years, managing territories over the Midwest, and a few years before that, I was a small business consultant as part of a co-op, dealing with about 3,000 small and mid-sized businesses across the country, negotiating contracts mostly for their business services, some of them in the hundreds of millions of dollars. So I've been through the ringer as a negotiator on contracts. Like Ingrid said, I served on the board from 2008 for 7 years till 2015. I was president twice, a couple times. Really nobody else wanted to run, so I kept doing it. Denise and the board here paints a pretty dire picture of the subdivision. And I'm going to tell you guys right now from experience on the board, that is not the case. When we took over the board, I'll kind of inform you guys. There's a budget you guys all have in front of you. Our major expenses are 3 main contracts: the pool contract, the landscaping contract, the D&I contract. When I got on the board, we immediately renegotiated all 3 of those contracts for lower rates and saving money. Like Dave just said, we worked pretty much on a $395 budget every year that I was on the board, okay? When we renegotiated the D&I contract, and this is news to some of you and I assume the current board, we included a reserve study in that contract for free. So this reserve study that is so needed has already been done. We've done it, we got the reserve study, and we budgeted accordingly, okay? What?
Because D&I doesn't have it.
I'm sure it's on our paperwork. It was done in 2010. From what you see in the reserve study, there's numerous things. All these, do you want me to have, it's 8 years ago, man, I don't know. When we look at that, we don't have a lake. We have a very small clubhouse. We have 1 pool, we have tennis courts. Those are our major expenses. Those are things that problems can arise from that we will need to pay the money out of. From that, We don't need to have $150,000 in reserves. We've gotten a new roof on the clubhouse from insurance on a hailstorm. These problems with the pool and the tennis courts are not new. We knew they were there. We knew they were coming. While I was on the board, you might not have seen this, but we did the entire pool fence and surrounding rock wall, which was a huge project, upwards of $40,000 that needed to be done. We did landscaping and lighting at all the entrances, basketball courts, resurfaced and patched the lots. We tore down and replaced 40 some odd trees in the common ground. We redid the flooring and carpeting in the clubhouse. We redid the men's bathroom in the clubhouse. We redid half of the fence along Old State, which is the subdivision's responsibility. And none of you guys heard about this except for the pool project because we were able to do it within the $395 monthly yearly budget. Okay. What we're asking for here, when we did the pool project, we held numerous votes. This happened on 3 separate years at the annual meeting. We asked the residents for upcoming capital improvements, would you rather have us increase the yearly assessments and build a reserve to take care of these things in the future, like the reserve study says we may need to, or would you have a special assessment? Every single year we voted, the residents overwhelmingly voted, we'd rather have a special assessment for a specific repair. And on the pool project, and on any project, I explained to everyone, we're going to do this democratically. Every resident has a voice. Right now we have a board that acts autocratically. We think we need to do this, and we're gonna do it, so send us your check. I was at 3 separate meetings where I saw Nola Vanchi say, we're doing this because the indentures tell us we can do it, so tough. And I saw residents being told, if you don't like it and you can't afford it, move out of the subdivision. As for the tennis courts, they were not being repaired because we sent a survey out my last year on the board asking everyone in the residency how many people use the tennis court. 2% of the households said they use the tennis courts. When I left the board, we were kind of setting a discussion of maybe we need a better use of the tennis courts. Noel himself said we should tear out the tennis court and put in a park, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So now all of a sudden, and I'm completely in favor of the tennis court repair, completely in favor of the pool repair. I love all these improvements, trust me. I don't know if they need to be done at the speed at which they're going to ease restraint on customers or residents' bills and finances, but the way it's going about is wrong. A board member should never tell this democracy, this subdivision, send us your check or get out, and we're doing it because one line in the indentures says we can do it. These improvements that are being done to the clubhouse, to the monuments, to the pool, we all own those. There's no reason to spend $3,000 on a reserve study, $6,000 on windows for a clubhouse that no one uses. Now, am I in favor of renovating the clubhouse at some point? Sure. But it's got to be done at the discretion of what the residents want and make it realistic. If we spend this money on the clubhouse, are we going to get the return on it? Are people going to be renting it out? Are people going to be paying into it? Is it going to make sense? From the industries I've been in, I know so many contractors. I had contractors that could do the monuments, stone fashion, in the last year for about $8,000 a monument. I had contractors that we could redo that whole clubhouse for under 20 grand. I promise you that. And we could do the windows a lot cheaper. I'm not against spending the money for doing this stuff. I'm against board member telling the residents, this is how much you're gonna pay, and this is how we're gonna do it, sorry. There's no other subdivisions on this list that Denise just showed that have had a 50% increase in their annual assessments. And that's what they're proposing right now, okay? They're proposing close to a 50% increase in assessments. And when's that gonna stop? They want to build up $150,000 in reserves. For what? We have a pool, we have a clubhouse, we have tennis courts. We don't have a lake, We don't have a workout facility. We don't have any of this stuff. Also, 2 of those subdivisions on that list that are doing so great managing their finances had loans out for improvements as recently as 2015. We've never taken a loan out as far as on my watch, and we still don't. So the finances and the previous boards, I do take exception of being thrown under the bus saying we didn't keep up. We knew these improvements were coming, we consulted with the residents, and we did what the residents wanted us to do. We knew they were happening, and I just said all the improvements we did do that most of you never knew about because we didn't ask you for more money. We budgeted correctly to do it, okay? I want to get back on this board because I think this is a democracy. I love this subdivision. I'm planning on being here for a long time. I want to see improvements done, but we talk about home values. When we have an annual assessment that is getting near close to the enclaves of Cherry Hills and Lake Chesterfield, who has a lake that they need to repair, and 3 pools and a clubhouse with a workout facility, if I'm a prospective buyer at a house, I'm saying, what am I getting for my $600? I get this pool and these tennis courts? It's a big difference. And they're gonna say, well, it adjusts every year, so it can. How many times have you seen anything you pay for adjust down? Okay, and I'll also say this, on Lester Stuckmeyer, I don't think he's a very good attorney, okay? I dealt with him for 7 years. Lester Stuckmeyer does not run this subdivision. We run the subdivision. If we want to do a special assessment for improvements that we're going to do, that's what we do, if that's what the residents want. Lester Stuckmeyer charges way too much, has problems collecting overdue balances on assessments, and honestly, when we have had to file suit against a resident, didn't do very good there. And that's my opinion. So all his job is going after past due assessments and then counseling us on the indentures and stuff. I'll also say this, I was on the committee to redo the indentures, which were in dire need, and I was also on the committee for the community standards, which you all will receive. I can tell you right now how this board does business. We sent our recommendations on the community standards to the board. We approved them in a meeting. Many of those were changed without the committee's consent or even knowledge and put into place by this board because that's the way those 3 people saw fit. No input from the residents, no input from the committee that even worked on it, okay? I promise you, if I'm on the board again, I'll get the projects done that we want done, and I'll get them done for a lot cheaper. When we did our special assessment on the pool for $100 for a $40,000 project, we didn't get charged anything from D&I. And honestly, if we do another one, I won't pay that. There's ways to go about things. There's improvements that need to be done, but they gotta be done the right way, okay? It's all of our subdivision. I like the tennis courts, they look great. I don't play tennis, but I know one thing as a resident, I wasn't consulted on whether I wanted to redo the tennis courts. I was just told to send a check for $400. And I also was asked, how would you rather have the assessment and the capital improvements separate or together? Most people said separate. We're doing it together. So I'm gonna tell you guys, if I'm back on this board, we'll get the projects you guys want done as residents and the ones that need to be done at a much lower budget. If I have to get out there and do it myself, which we did with the fence, ripping out the old fence and ties. I was out there with Doug, we ripped it out ourselves to save money. I'll do that for you guys, and I will have 100% transparency. I will never ask you guys or tell you guys, write me a check, and when you question it, say, sorry, I'm the trustee, it says I'm able to do this in the indentures, so do it. That's not how this is supposed to work.
Are we able to ask questions?
I'll take your question.
Okay, so I'm curious, where is the reserve study? And maybe this isn't a question for you, it's for you.
I want to know too.
I'll get in the files, it was from 8 years ago.
But you are our property manager, and you're responsible for advising on the community. And we've been talking, I know, in meetings that you've been attending for 8 months about the reserve study and the importance of a reserve study. And Dee and I agreed that it was extremely important to do that. If one was prepared, where is it?
It was
highlight research study. It was not a full-fledged research study.
So it was not a reserve
It was
study
not a
like we're
reserve
talking
study.
about.
It was a highlight research study.
What's the difference?
What is the difference
I'm gonna answer
between,
I'm
what
gonna
is
answer
the
your question.
difference between a highlight reserve study?
That reserve study was brought to their attention, they ignored it.
No. And then let me
Brought up
ask
in a
another
meeting,
question,
they
because I've been sitting,
Well,
I've
I
been a
want the
homeowner
minutes.
since 2007, and I handled the pool or I was on the committee to handle the pool project, and Pro Pool indicated that they had advised the board, the prior board that you were on, and there were documents of recommendations that they had made every single year with regards to repairs that were needed. Supposedly, if we had a reserve study, like you said, and you were aware of those needed repairs coming down the pike, then you would have known that we needed to have adequate monies to make those repairs when they came. Some of these were past due. We have $30,000 in reserves, and we had repairs totaling $50,000 almost that encompassed repairs recommended over the course of the last 4 years. If we had a reserve study and we were planning for those repairs, where was the money from them?
Pam, I'll answer that question twofold. One, Pro Pool, much like any time you take your car to the mechanic, and this goes for the landscaping contract, it goes for the D&I contract as well. Every time you meet with them, they're going to have recommendations on how you need to spend more money with them. Two, we did multiple improvements to the pool, to the filtration system, everything they recommended every year I was on the board. We did those things. Three, I'm gonna go back to my first point. The residents in this subdivision, when I was on the board, overwhelmingly voted and said, if there's any major projects that need to happen, such as this pool project, we want it to be a special assessment. We do not want our annual fees increased to build up reserves in case something happens. We were acting at the request of the residents.
I remember actually that survey because it came in 2008 when I moved into the neighborhood. Do you know how many homeowners have changed every year do you know what the average homeowner turnover is in our neighborhood every year?
I don't know.
15 to 17 houses. So over the course of the last 10 years, we've had substantial turnover. So what people would have voted in a survey, and if I remember actually the way that survey was written, it was specifically about the wall, and it was regarding, did we want to have a special assessment for the entire cost of the wall? Did we want to have utilization of the reserves for the cost of the wall, or did we want to have a combination of the two, partial reserves, partial assessment? And the decision was made, partial reserves and partial assessment. That's why the special assessment was only $90 for the wall, and we took out of reserve. That's how our reserves got down, partially how they got down to where they are.
That is correct. And the survey I'm talking about was at annual meetings subsequent to those projects. Every November at our annual meeting, I sat here and asked for future projects, because we were even talking about the monuments as recently as my last year on the board. I asked, and again, overwhelmingly the residents said, if there's a big project that needs to be done, we'd rather stroke one check for it than have our fees go up every year, because like I said, they never go down. That's what it is.
So last year, when we did the projects for the two things that needed dire repairs, the pool cover, in fact, which has created part of the problem with the surface of the pool disintegrating, they had recommended a new cover. I believe it was in 2015, and that was when you were still on the board, and no new cover had been purchased. It's being purchased this year. So I know that the recommended repairs that served to help the deterioration were not done. So when we got ready to do these major repairs that needed to be done this year, and there was a special assessment, what was the problem with the special assessment? If you're saying that everybody wanted a special assessment, I've sat in meetings with you and you've argued that they shouldn't have done a special assessment.
No, I never said they should not have done a special assessment. The way they went about it was wrong. They did not ask customer support for the tennis courts. And I can tell you right now, Pro Pool never gave a recommendation to us saying this needs to be replaced immediately and us not do it.
I have the copies of the writings because I asked them to give them.
I'm telling you right now, if we said, can we get 2 more years out of it? And they said yes, then we went 2 more years. They never told us one thing and said, this needs to be replaced right now, and we didn't do it. That didn't happen. Reason we didn't do the tennis courts was 1, there was a lack of interest in the tennis courts. 2, there's an issue with rocks coming up through the ground, hopefully corrected by the drainage fix, that no matter if we replace, resurface, repair the cracks, no matter what, they're going to come back. That was what we were told. So hopefully it doesn't happen because of the drainage issue.
Well, if
Yes.
anybody would like to see every one of the reports from ProPool with regards to what they suggested that we as a neighborhood should do over the course of the last 3 to 4 years that we did not do, I have copies of every one of them because I was on the pool committee and I gathered all that information together. So if anybody wants copies of it, let me know. I'd be happy to give it to you.
Can we interrupt
Sure.
whenever Denise is doing her speech?
Is it Denise, right?
No, I'm not.
Thank you, guys. And if you have any more questions, come to the annual meeting next month and I'll be there.
It was a question and answer period.
We have the next candidate, and that's Denise Breeze, who you all know.
Answer period.
Rice, correct, sorry. And you all know her, but she will talk a little bit more about her vision for the board, and why she would like to run again.
Thank you.
So that was really interesting listening to John. I like John personally. He's a great guy. He's a nice guy. A little bit rough around the edges, but he's a nice guy. And you know what they say, when folks go low, you go high. So I'm gonna try to go high. However, he has, you know, we have an obligation to have bonded and insured contractors. It is a violation of our indentures, and basically Ingrid only steers us to contractors that
shows
are
their
bonded and
immaturity.
insured. So we cannot, as homeowners, go in and start painting or tearing up landscaping. We open ourselves up to a lawsuit. So we have to do this by the book and not just on the cheap. I'm thinking of some of my notes here, and I'm trying to, the reserve study just really got me on that fairy tale. You know, overall, you know, John, this whole process has been open in the past year, and John has not come to any of these work sessions when we were doing all the bids for the pool and the tennis courts. In fact, he attended a couple of meetings, and he would show up at the beginning and basically make a couple of comments and run out the door. I really would have valued his input and his partnership at that particular time, but his MO is a little bit different. Overall, some of the things that I've also implemented this past year, I assisted with the final push for the indentures. I walked door to door getting additional signatures with a group of other residents. Unfortunately, John says that he helped design the indentures. We actually had, the vote was in October, we actually had to go and knock on his door and ask him to sign his ballot for the indentures. So he has really been unplugged for the last year. I also implemented a group of 7 committees to support the board operations and encourage resident participation. The goal is to hear the resident feedback, and that's exactly what we've been doing. I oversaw also 6 different activities this year with the help of very key social committee members. So we were engaged with that. And then I helped implement a multifaceted approach for communications. I worked with Pamela Glazier to create the newsletters. We've published 2 newsletters. We've updated the websites. We've done email blasts with the minutes. We've increased communications in a comprehensive way to gain more resident engagement. In fact, I venture to say that you had more communication from this board than you probably have in the last 5 or 10 years.
I would agree.
So I know you all are seeing the results of this board and what we have done and our vision for the future. I think our results speak for ourselves, and in this case, it speaks for me. And I'd be honored to work with you guys to move forward. I think you see that John and I have very different styles of management, and I'd just be honored for your vote to move forward. So.
Hi, I just want to say a few things about Denise. I've lived in Nantucket since 93. We were original homeowners. I've been here a long time. I've seen all the improvements that John had done over the years. And even before that, the Doziers, and even before that, Carol Emmett and Bob Emmett were, I think, our original trustees. Do you remember the Emmets?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love tennis, and I have approached the trustees every year that I would like to see the tennis courts improved. And I was told that there was not much interest in the tennis courts. I do not ever recall a survey coming to my door that to vote that yes, let's please keep the tennis courts in good condition. It was kind of like just a mere conversation. I have not had the best communication from D&I, from the trustees, from the years that I've lived here. This is the first time I've ever felt like my voice was being heard and that there is good communication. So I'm fully supportive of Denise. She has been to my door. Noel has been to my door. I don't think I've had a visit from a trustee, I can't ever recall, to my door. So I have been very involved, and any questions that I have been welcomed, that there's been open communication. I do not feel that they are biased in any way whatsoever, and that they make decisions without hearing from the community. And I guess I'm done. Did you want to go there?
Yes, I just have one. Whoever is the trustee, my best wishes. I just have one suggestion. When you guys send out surveys, those are great surveys. I mean, we want to have improvements in every aspect of our neighborhood, right? Can you also tell us the tag price of those things? That will help us make a decision. I mean, if you ask me, do you want to have a great pool? Obviously, I want to have a great pool. Yeah. Does it come with like $50,000 bill? If you can tell us that upfront, that will help us make a decision.
So when we did do that resident survey, there were estimates, there were ranges, because obviously we were bidding out these projects. So, you know, there was probably a $10,000 or $20,000 range in the estimate. But I think that's a valid point, and obviously, how can you vote for something if you think it's sky high or dirt cheap, you know? So, well taken.
Hi, so I want to thank the board, and I want to thank Denise, because I was one of those people that were at the meeting last November, and I didn't know Denise before then. She doesn't live on my street. I kind of just know the people around my street. I didn't know Pamela. I got to meet Pamela. I knew Noel. But what I want to say is I was really disappointed in the past boards, and I served on a board for a little bit until one of our residents decided to not like the fact that I was married to the mayor at the time and wanted, you know, certain things. And so what I want to say is, you know, I did help with some of these committees, and I am in charge of the budget for the Werther household. And but I'm embarrassed to say some of the times when people hear we live in Nantucket and we're being redlined by real estate agents because they don't want to show us. We're the poor side. I don't want that. I have lived in my home. We just celebrated a quarter of a century living in Nantucket. We raised our little girls here that are now 29 and 34. So I'm old. I want our neighbors to love on each other, and I want us to take care of each other. Noel, when we had a neighbor who we saw was struggling, I said, let's go help them. I've offered to pick, I can't stand the monuments. I'm so disappointed they're number 3 on the list, but I understand democracy, I'm going for it. But I'm sure gonna go up there and pick weeds, even though D&I told me don't do it. So have you and Mr. Dozier got to tear down signs unless you broke the law? I don't understand it, because you know what? She won't let me pick a weed, because I could get hurt and I would sue the subdivision, which I wouldn't, but let's just go with that. I just wanna say thank you to you and Noel, and even Juliet, who can't be with us here tonight. But it would not have worked had you 3 not worked together and worked with D&I, who manages a ton of properties, who we need to get number 1. I don't want to hear that I'm number 6 in there or number 20 to them. I want Nantucket to be number 1 to D&I. I do, and I want our trustees, I don't want to hear down speaking. And for the people who I had to shush earlier, I can't hear. Be respected. I sit up front so that I can hear you all speak. When I have to shush people because they're being rude because they don't like what they're hearing, it doesn't fly with me. So I appreciate the people who stood behind, decided to listen to both trustees, share their vision for Nantucket, and I want us to support. I want us to support our neighbors. I want us to, when you see something that needs to be done, call, get it done. Join a committee, but don't sit here and complain about the money. I understand people live on, like I said, I am the budget lady. I coupon. But you know, I also know that my home is an investment, and I'm gonna live here for a while. My husband's invested in the community as I am, and I think that our home is our biggest investment. And if we don't pay to get the pool fixed, the landscaping fixed, I'm not so big about the clubhouse, but I think if it gets used, we'll use it. My husband's playing tennis twice a week. I'm excited that he's getting out and being healthy. We want to have a garden club. We had this lady organized a plant exchange. We didn't have a lot of people came. I remember you came, I believe. There were people that you guys came and asked for plants. That's what I want. That's taking care of Nantucket. So, thank you.
Thank you.
I'll make this very quick.
If you have,
Wait,
oh,
we
I'm
got a
sorry.
few more
Go ahead.
comments. I'm gonna get to hold the microphone.
Can you sing a rendition for us?
Thank you very much to the current board members, Denise, Noel, and Juliet, particularly the past year, all the hard work, time and effort that's gone into the projects. It's very much appreciated. I'm a 25-year original homeowner, resident of Nantucket. I have a question for John. So you're a father of 2 young children, and I'm wondering, do you have a savings account?
Yes.
Set aside for their college education?
I do.
Do you have a 401k plan with your employer? Or
I do,
something
I don't
similar?
know. Yes, I do. I don't
So
know
my
how much.
question for you would be, as a successful businessman, why would you be content with a financial plan to live paycheck by paycheck, which is essentially the equivalent of keeping the assessment as it has been since year 1, and this is now year 25, and not plan for the future like you are for your retirement for your children?
I'll explain that if everyone can hear me. One, Nantucket's not a child and it's not a household. It's a subdivision.
Community.
Like I said, I own a business. I do not keep as much money in the coffers as I have to, just in case something might happen. If I make money, I take it out because I want to have that money because it's mine. If something breaks or something needs improvement, then I'll pay for it. It's your money. It does not, we've been at $36,000 roughly in reserves for the last 10 years. The subdivision does not need more than that if you want to pay an assessment for when a big project is needed. These big projects are not needed all the time. It's the pool, the clubhouse, the tennis courts. That's all we spend money on.
One
We
last
have one
question.
hot water heater,
One last question.
one furnace,
Do
one
you
air
think you
conditioner.
have the temperament to be a trustee to represent the residents of Nantucket?
Well, I did it for 7 years and kept getting voted
I'm
back
asking
in,
you
so
for
yeah, I
right
think
now.
so. Yes, I do.
Going forward, do you feel that?
Absolutely.
In my personal opinion, you're certainly not demonstrating that tonight.
So I just wanted to say, sorry, everyone says I want to say one thing real quick, and so I guess I'm the next person that wants to say one thing real quick. I've lived here since 2002, and I will be the first to tell you, I never came to a board meeting until this year. I stunk as a resident of this community, and it's amazing because you don't. It's easy to be negative about, you know, the nickel and dime stuff here and there until something happens to you that needs to get fixed and you're part of the community and you wait 2 years and it's still not fixed. I'm in the cul-de-sac, I don't even know if there's a picture up there because I'm not even sure what count anymore, where we have had literally nothing but maybe like 8 blades of grass in our cul-de-sac for over 2 years, for 2.5, almost 3 years now. Mulch removed everything. We begged and pleaded for 2 years and were constantly told, well, we don't even have $800 to put new landscaping in your cul-de-sac. And we had houses sitting on the market that weren't selling on our little cul-de-sac because it looked horrible out the front window. Here long enough, everybody's going to have something that affects them. Yes. It may not be the pool, it may not be, you know, the cul-de-sac design, it may not be the tennis courts, but there's going to be something that affects wherever you live if you're here for more than a few years. And that's why it's important that we have some reserves. I shouldn't have had to wait 2.5 years for $800 in landscaping because there was no money to be found until this new board scraped it together and they were willing to work to do what was needed to be done to help us out because we've waited so long for some help.
Can I say one tiny thing?
I can just reply, I think people can hear me. One, that had to be after I was on the board. No one ever came to us with landscaping and cul-de-sac and said, we need a new bush because it was struck by lightning, and we did not fulfill that.
I have all the emails that I sent to Ingrid and I CC'd the board.
Okay,
So,
I haven't been on the board for over 2.5 years now.
So 2016.
2015 was my last term.
Part of 2016.
I think we need to close down because the school
But I'm gonna-
needs to close
but
at 9 o'clock.
I'm gonna say something else, right? If I was a board member and I said, because we are the trustees and we make the that, you don't have any say in it because we make the decisions. Would everyone here be okay with that?
That's not how it's run.
That's exactly right.
To repair the infrastructure under duty